Wow, this is, I got to say, one of the craziest stories in all of the accounts of Israel as a nation, or as two nations. And we find ourselves kind of right in the middle of the drama. But you're going to learn some things if you don't know the story that hopefully will help you, wherever you are in your walk, to get to the scene. We have to lay a couple of foundational background pieces of context. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago we were discussing a good king of Judah. Now remember, there are two nations. The northern kingdom is called Israel. The southern kingdom is called Judah. And in Israel, one of the worst kings, named Ahab, is ruling. In the south, one of the good kings, Jehoshaphat, is ruling. Now remember that battle that Jehoshaphat was going into, not against Israel, but against a collaboration of many enemy nations coming up from the southeast. Jehoshaphat, not knowing what to do, it was so sudden. He didn't have an army big enough to take on three other armies. He cried out to the Lord. The nation that he had been already leading had reformed in their hearts. See, the key to that victory was actually in the Reformation that Jehoshaphat led. Remember, he raised up Levites to become judges again, to teach the law again to the people of God again. And their hearts having been set toward the Lord, following the king, they were all united with one goal, and their prayer reaches heaven, and God does something that is truly miraculous. Remember what it was? Jehoshaphat puts the choir in front of the army. Unheard of. And I'm sure if I were in that choir, my knees would be wobbly, you know. He didn't give them shields and swords. Just choir robes, probably thin ones. And they began to praise the Lord, for his mercy endures. And as they were singing praises to God, God confused the enemy so that the three other nations that were warring against Judah, before they could even reach them, they started killing each other. By the time Judah arrived at the battlefield, all of those other nations were lying dead. And Judah just went to collect the spoil. It's a fascinating reminder about the sovereign power of God over all nations. And that what seems intimidating to you or to us is actually nothing to God. And that the real battle isn't about who's got more swords or tanks or nukes. It's about whose heart is right before the Creator. And it's a very simple truth. If you surrender your heart to the God who has made you, then you will not fail. You will not err. But you will be following the one who is truly leading you. Throughout every suffering and trial, personally or corporately, God will give you the victory ultimately in that final resurrection, because Jesus has risen on our behalf. And in the meantime, you can experience some really amazing, miraculous blessings like Jehoshaphat with his choir. He's commended, by the way, for being a good king. His heart was toward the Lord, but Jehoshaphat was far from perfect. He made a couple of really glaring mistakes. One of them we had already learned about was becoming friends, as hard as it is maybe to imagine, becoming friends with one of the worst kings, Ahab. I mean, this guy was so wicked, he thought burning children alive to Baals and other false gods, lining himself with Jezebel, that it was a light thing. It wasn't even a big deal. And leading all the nation of Israel to further depravity. And Jehoshaphat becomes buddy-buddy with him. Perhaps Jehoshaphat is, at this point, motivated mostly by politics. That's what we can kind of relate to in our culture today, right? We see leaders of countries making deals with other countries, and you might think, but that country's bad, right? Why are they making a deal? And it's all political game. And one of the things that Jehoshaphat does, which is going to be important for this story, in this glaring error, he decides, as part of this alliance with Ahab and the kingdom of Israel, he says, let's seal the deal, Ahab. Let's make a contract that cannot be broken. I'll tell you what, I will give my son to your daughter in marriage. The scene begins with a forbidden marriage. Who's the woman in question that Jehoshaphat marries his son to? Well, it is the first name in our passage from today, in verse number 10. Her name is Athaliah. And I cannot think of a worse candidate for marriage than this woman. She's literally the spawn of Ahab and Jezebel. And there is no surprise that Athaliah is a narcissistic, murderous witch. She is evil. She's corrupted. She has no compassion. And we'll see that in a moment. And Jehoshaphat, sadly, is blind to this and agrees to marry his son to Ahab and Jezebel's daughter. Of course, later on, Jehoshaphat, near the end of his life, sets up this particular son, not his other sons, to become the king in his stead. So who becomes the successor to Jehoshaphat when he dies? It is this very man who is married to this woman. As a foolish attempt to unite the kingdom, it ends up breaking it up even further. The man's name is Jehoram, and no surprise, he is not a good guy. I want to read for you just a couple of verses about this guy. It says, look at it together with me in chapter 21, same book, verse 4. Now when Jehoram was established over the kingdom of his father, he strengthened himself and killed all his brothers with the sword, and also others of the princes of Israel. This is not a good thing, by the way. The Bible is not saying, oh yeah, this was part of him establishing himself as the king. No, this is a glaring indictment. This man murdered his own brothers, the sons of his own father. That's the thanks that Jehoshaphat gets for putting his son Jehoram in charge. Now, where did Jehoram get this crazy idea to murder all of his brothers? What I want to suggest to you is that it came actually from Athaliah, his wife. There's a verse that gives us a clue. Watch what it says in verse number 6, chapter 21. Talking about Jehoram, it says, and he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for he had the daughter of Ahab as a wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. This forbidden marriage leads to poisonous and toxic fruit. It begins with a mass murdering of his own house. Do you think he woke up one day and said, I need to kill my brothers, and never consulted his wife? Or did they have conversations about it? She's from the house of Ahab, from the other kingdom. She's married into his kingdom. She's looking at those other men as competitors, as challengers. If we start introducing more Baal worship, maybe they'll take offense and stand up for the faith of their father, Jehoshaphat. No, Jehoram, we can't let that happen. You got to be strong. Where would she have gotten that idea? Well, it's again no surprise. The Bible tells us very plainly her mother was Jezebel. And Jezebel is literally a nickname for an evil woman. We use it today even when saying, well, she was a Jezebel. What does that mean? First of all, it's not an idiom that we developed recently. In the book of Revelation, it also uses the name Jezebel as an idiom. There's a Jezebel spirit that's infecting this church, and they're being strongly warned by Christ to do something about it. This Jezebel spirit is perverse, immoral, murderous, careless, and it's infected Jezebel's daughter, Athaliah. Now, this murder doesn't end with Jehoram's brothers. Jehoram falls into this heavy sin lifestyle. He gets cursed by God. I won't read for you all the passage just for the sake of time, but it's a very colorful picture. Read it in chapter 21. He gets a love letter from the prophet Elijah. I think this is a fascinating passage because Elijah is a very important prophet, but we don't have a book called Elijah, but we do have a letter from Elijah. This is first person, Elijah to Jehoram. And it's in verse 12 through 15. But it ends with basically condemning Jehoram to a terrible, painful disease that will kill him slowly until his insides become his outsides. That's the kind of letter you don't want to get, right? After he dies, it says that all of his sons had been killed in a raid from Philistines and some other raiders. That's described in the letter and then afterward. And what's fascinating about this part of the story is that Jehoram had multiple wives, as a king probably would in this day. But in the raid of these Philistines, it says all of his sons and his wives were captive, and were killed, the men especially. But somehow Athaliah escapes this. Somehow Athaliah's son escapes this. I wonder how that happened. So Jehoram's brothers are murdered. Jehoram's sons are murdered. And the only survivors here are, go figure, Athaliah and the one remaining son who is named Ahaziah. Ahaziah, it says, look at chapter 22, verse 1. Then the inhabitants of Jerusalem made Ahaziah his youngest son king in his place, for the raiders who had came with the Arabians into the camp had killed all the older sons. So Ahaziah the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, reigned. How long did Ahaziah reign? It says 1 year. Why? Well, he was pretty terrible. Verse 3, he also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab. For his mother, oh, there she is again, Athaliah. What was Jehoram? What did it say about him? For his wife, Athaliah. Now we get to his son, Ahaziah, and it says, for his mother, Athaliah, is putting up to all kinds of wickedness. It says, they were his counselors after the death of his father to his destruction. So he made more alliances with Israel. He ended up getting killed by a guy named Jehu, which we'll talk about later. But now we are arriving at the point where we started, where the kingdom of Judah has no king, and there's no apparent heir to the throne, because all of Jehoram's sons have died, and now Ahaziah has died. And then we get to verse number 10 of chapter 22. Look at it again. It says, when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. So that sentence doesn't end how you think it would when it begins. The mother of Ahaziah, when she saw that her son had been killed, you think the next part would be she mourned, she got angry, but no, it says she took opportunity to kill all of his sons, which, if you haven't been following the plot, those are her grandsons. We're at the third generation now. All of Jehoram's brothers have died. All of Jehoram's sons have died, except for Ahaziah. And now all of Jehoram's grandsons have died. And it's all connected to this woman named Athaliah. Athaliah was a wicked person. And I want to just begin by sharing with you that when the Bible talks about forbidden marriage, it's not telling you in a metaphorical sense. It's literally telling you, be careful who you marry. You have no idea the implications of what will happen generations from now, after you're long dead and gone, about the decisions that you make in your life. The decision to marry Jehoram to Athaliah ended up causing the deaths of all of the descendants of Jehoshaphat except for one. I want you just to let that sink in for a moment. Not one, not two, but 3 generations. 3 generations. Why? Because she was a worshiper of idols. Her heart was not toward the Lord. The Bible tells us again and again, especially in the New Testament, to be not unequally yoked, to not marry someone who is yoked to Baal and to Dagon and to other idols of this age. She's not yoked to the sinful pleasures of this life, because if she is and you marry her, you just yoked yourself to her wagon, and now she's going to be pulling you in the opposite direction. So I want to speak for a moment just to the young men here. If you're not married, outside of surrendering your life to Jesus Christ, the most important decision you'll ever make is who you hitch your wagon to. Because that's going to mean a lot, not just for you, but for your children who are not yet born, for your grandchildren who have not even been a whisper in your imagination, and for many other people who you will never meet. It really does make that much of a difference. Thankfully, the Bible tells us another marriage that is in the same story, gives us a much brighter picture. Okay? I don't know if you caught it, but I want you to see it with me. Back in our main text, let's read verse 11. This heroine named Jehoshabath, also her name is Jehosheba, it's the same person. Jehoshabath, beautiful name, by the way. If you're looking for baby names, you could go Ja or Ya, it's fine. Yehosheba, Yehosheba, Jehoshabath. You just got to say it enough and you'll realize how pretty it really is. Her name means Yahweh has sworn or promised. He has made an oath. What was the oath that God made to David? That there will come a seed from David that will sit on the throne forever and ever. And at this point of the story, there has been a bottleneck so that every surviving descendant of David has been killed except for one. And why did that one survive? Because Jehoshabath. If we're reading in Hebrew, we're literally reading because Yahweh has sworn to keep his promise. He will not leave his people. He will fulfill what he has sworn. The daughter of the king, it says that she took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from the king's sons who were being murdered and put him and his nurse in a bedroom. He is an infant. He is a tiny baby. And as soon as Athaliah realizes that she has a moment, this is a critical political moment, because Ahaziah, it's now been announced to the kingdom of Judah that he's dead. And it's always a big question of who's going to take his place if he didn't establish it ahead of time. And he hadn't. You know why? Because he's only been ruling for 1 year. He's a young man. He wasn't ready to think about that. So it's a sudden upheaval of the kingdom. And Athaliah, the wicked witch, she says, now it's time to kill all of the possible heirs so that I can establish myself. Before anybody can figure out what's going on, she's bringing in palace guards and slaughtering all of the heirs, not just the direct sons of Ahaziah, but anybody who's even close, anywhere in the house. I can't imagine the screams and the confusion, but in the midst of that, there's this woman, pure of heart, and she sees the baby, Joash, the king's son, and she grabs him without hesitation. She brings his nurse, and they run away and hide, risking their own lives. But there's another person in the story. It says, we're continuing now. It says, so Jehoshabath, the daughter of King Jehoram, the wife of Jehoiada, the priest. So, now we have another marriage. In the midst of this chaotic scene of murderous rampage, there is a woman named Jehoshabath who is a family member of this broken house, and she's married to a man named Jehoiada, who is the priest. He might even be the high priest. And they are married not just to each other, but their hearts are wed to the God of Israel. And just as destructive as a forbidden marriage could be in the lives of those whom it influences, so too a faithful, loving, godly marriage can bless many generations to come. This man and this woman have dedicated themselves to the Lord, risking their lives, putting themselves in peril. Athaliah is someone to be feared. And when she has killed all those in the room or in the house, she's established herself as the ruler. And yes, at this point in time, this is why it's such a crazy story. Judah doesn't have a king, it has a queen. And the queen is not from the house of David, she's from the house of Ahab. But over and against that, Jehoiada and Jehoshabath have come together seeking the Lord and willing to follow him wherever it may lead, even to death. They said the promise is worth more than us. I'm going to tell you something today, just so you know this today as a Christian. The gospel of Jesus Christ is worth more. It's worth more than whatever you have to give or to live in your life. And we should be willing, like this man and this woman, to take our bride, to take our husband, to take our family and say, Lord, we belong to you. How can we serve you? How can we expand your kingdom? How can we put ourselves in the pathway of righteousness so that others may see the light and come to know Jesus? In this case, it required them to hide this baby. I mean, how do you hide a baby? You can't stop the crying, as we noticed already in the sanctuary, right? You can't, as much as you try. You can play nice, you can be threatening, you can shove a pacifier or a banana. It doesn't stop the baby from doing what babies do. And praise the Lord for babies. Say amen, right? Children are a heritage from the Lord. And they are pleasing to the Lord. And this baby, poor little Joash, has no idea what's going on. All of his family has been murdered, and he's just weighing away for milk. So there are many moments of intense anxiety, hoping the walls are thick. And look at what it says in verse 12. And he was hidden with them in the house of God for 6 years. 6 years! 6 years while Athaliah, this wicked queen, was ruling the land of Judah. It was like the scene in Narnia when the Ice Queen takes over and it's winter and no Christmas. You know what I mean? You ever read that book? That's what's going on in Judah. There's no snow. There's only cold. Hard hearts. Threatening. Not worshiping the Lord, but worshiping all kind of creatures. Demons, spirits, wicked ideas. While all the while this woman is solidifying herself as the leader. Now, I want to bring us into the second point here, which is not just that there is a forbidden marriage, but there's also an inverted kingdom. There's like an upside-down kingdom. And you have to go back and read it also in 2 Kings and the end of 1 Kings. We get the same part of the story, but it tells us more about what's going on in Israel. You guys remember, we talked about Ahab, the wicked king. Yet at the end, he humbled himself. God said to Elijah that because of Ahab's humility, that's a funny sounding sentence, that the judgment would not come in his lifetime, but in the lifetime of his son. It did come. There was a man anointed by God to bring judgment on the entire house of Ahab. So there was a cleaning of house, if you will. It's a fascinating account. A man named Jehu goes into the heart of Israel. He's a commander. He's a military man. He finds out who Ahab's family is. Ahab had died in battle, but Jezebel was alive, and all of the sons of Ahab and the descendants of Ahab and all the people who were loyal to Baal, they were still alive and well in Israel. And Jehu gathered them all up, and at one point he put the followers of Baal all in one house. And he said, all right, guys, we're going to have a party to Baal. It's Baal Day, National Baal Day. Everybody come. If you don't come, we're going to kill you. All the faithful servants of Baal showed up in this one place. Then they locked the doors, and then they were all killed. And then Jehu became the king of Israel. This is why this is like an upside-down story. Because if you can believe it, at this moment in time, there's something like a revival in Israel. There's something like a righteous king in Israel, at least initially. While at the same time, there couldn't be a worse person on the throne in Judah, this wicked woman who's not even from the house of David. Everything is inverted about this. And the Bible is drawing it out so that you can see that no matter what happens, no matter how crazy it gets, that God is actually still ruling. He's still operating. That's why the enemy, no matter what, cannot win. What was right or what was wrong will be made right. And all the upside-down kingdoms of today, who may be gaining authority and power and pouring out this demonic threatening against you or against others, just know this, that it doesn't matter. Because the Lord is on his throne. And it all will be made right. The Bible says that Jesus, as he ascends to the Father, that he must rule and reign until all enemies are put underneath his feet. And that includes political enemies. That includes spiritual darkness. That includes all of the vices that have plagued you from the very beginning. up until the present day, they will all come underneath the feet of the Lord Jesus no matter what happens. There is no spell that the enemy can put on you. There is no word of blasphemous hatred. There is no threatening power of any military might, whether man or angelic, that can stand against the King of Kings. And that's pictured here. No matter how wrong it can get in Judah, no matter how weird and backwards it can get, no matter how upside down, even compared to Israel, it can get, yet God is still on the throne. Because about 300 feet away from this throne of this woman in a room sits a little boy, and the enemy doesn't know about him. And year after year, there's a faithful man and woman, a husband and wife, who are raising this boy, who are teaching him about the ways of God, who are showing him the Scriptures, even in secret, even underground. There's like a church that is prospering, flourishing. Though the nation writ large is throwing out all kinds of vicious things against the God who had created them. Yet God is raising up an heir. You see, there had not been a total annihilation. One of the mistakes that the enemy makes, one of the central vices of the devil himself, is the thing that also can infect us, by the way, and it is pride. It is actually the pride that causes the downfall of the satanic kingdom, because he cannot help but boast in himself and say, I have done this, I have succeeded, I have killed the author of life. No doubt he said something like that, the darkest hours of the cross. Yet the enemy did not know that in his death, Jesus would actually conquer death and rise up from the dead, and he would stand forever on the throne of his ancestor David. And he would fulfill the promise of God from all the ages. For he has sworn an oath that his kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. So let the enemies rage against the Son. Let the heathen speak whatever blasphemies that they can while the day is now. But when tomorrow comes, the light will dawn, friends. So listen, if you are a believer, take courage. Pattern yourself after Jehoshaphat, after Jehoiada. You know what his name means, by the way? Jehoiada. Every name means something. His name means the Lord, Yahweh, knows. Isn't that funny? Jehoshaphat, the Lord has sworn to keep his promise. I'm getting that baby. Athaliah is not getting this baby. I'm getting that baby. Jehoiada, solemn, still, peaceful. The Lord knows. His eyes see. He is not schemed or outsmarted by the devil. No matter what Athaliah or anyone else says or does, it isn't the enemy that sits on the throne, but it's God. We get to the third point here, which is the title of the message, A Son is Given. For 6 years, Joash is being raised in the house of the Lord. What a remarkable parable and metaphor that is. He's first hidden in a bedroom of the palace, but somehow, quickly after, Jehoiada, who is the priest, has special access to the temple, brings him in there, and for the next 6 years, he is raised in the house of his Father in heaven, the house of the Lord. And for 6 years, he is about his Father's business. And Joash, if you can believe it or not, his name actually means Yahweh gives. The Lord gives. The Bible promises, unto us a son is given. He kept his promise. Let's read the rest of the story now. Verse 1 of chapter 23. It says, in the 7th year, Jehoiada strengthened himself and made a covenant with the captains of hundreds, Azariah the son of Jehoram, Ishmael the son of Jehonan, Azariah the son of Obed, Messiah the son of Adiah, and Elishaphat the son of Zichri. And they went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and from the chief fathers of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. Then all the assembly made a covenant with the king in the house of God. That's Joash, 7-year-old boy. And he said to them, that's Jehoiada, behold, the king's son shall reign, as the Lord has said of the sons of David. Wow. I mean, this was a startling revelation. Because remember how dark it is. An upside-down kingdom. The ruler Athaliah has no doubt spit out these lies, these venomous serpent lies, that she swallowed up all the house of David. She had sent out her minions, her messengers, to tell them what? All those living in Jerusalem and around in Judea. Tell them what? The Lord doesn't reign. His promises are fake. He hadn't really said that. I'm the one in charge. Worship me. Come to my throne. Come into my house. Worship my gods. And for years, those lies had been spreading, and it's like poison in the heart and the mind of those who were seeking to be faithful. And how could they keep their hearts loyal to the Lord, to the God of Abraham, whenever it seemed like Athaliah was right? For years upon years, it would seem like God wouldn't do anything. It seemed like she was vindicated. Doubts had been creeping in. But on that 7th year, when Jehoiada brought some of the guard in, some of the soldiers in, some of the chief Levites into the house of the Lord and opened a door, and there they saw a boy. And what did he say? The Lord has kept his promise. That would have lifted their heart out of the grave. Man. The king's son shall reign as the Lord has said of the sons of David. Verse 4, this is what you shall do. 1/3 of you, entering on the Sabbath of the priests and the Levites, shall be keeping watch over the doors. 1/3 shall be the king's house. 1/3 at the gates of the foundation. All the people shall be in the courts of the house of the Lord. But let no one come into the house of the Lord except the priests and those of the Levites who serve. They may go in, for they are holy. But all the people shall keep the watch of the Lord. And the Levites shall surround the king on all sides, every man with his weapons in his hand, and whoever comes into the house, let him be put to death. You are to be with the king when he comes in and when he goes out. So the Levites and all Judah did according to that Jehoiada the priest commanded. And each man took his men who were to be on duty on the Sabbath, with those who were going off duty on the Sabbath, for Jehoiada the priest had not dismissed the divisions. And Jehoiada the priest gave to the captains of hundreds the spears and the large and small shields which had belonged to King David, that were in the temple of God. Then he set all the people, every man with his weapon in his hand, from the right side of the temple to the left side of the temple, along by the altar and by the temple, all around the king. Now we get to verse 11. And they brought out the king's son, and they put the crown on him, and gave him the testimony, and made him king. And then Jehoiada and his sons anointed him, and said, Long live the king! He's coronated. He's inherited his throne. There's a praise, a shout. Verse 12 says, when Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, she came to the people in the temple of the Lord, and when she looked, there was the king, standing by his pillar at the entrance. And the leaders and the trumpeters were by the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, and the singers with musical instruments, and those who led in praise. So Athaliah tore her clothes and said, Treason! Treason! Boy, that's ironic, isn't it? I mean, she's connected to the murder and killing of 3 generations. She has no right, no claim to the throne of David. No rightful inheritance. Stolen it by force. And she's pretending that they are the ones that are disobeying, that are rebellious. What a remarkable trick of the devil. I wonder if he lies like that today. I wonder if he comes to you, pompous, sanctimonious, religious, and saying, oh yeah, those people over there talking about Jesus like it's the main thing. They're wrong. They're going to stand in front of God and give an account. You need to come this way. You need to follow our path. How he leads many astray. Of course, Athaliah is not going to say, I'm so sorry. There's been a mistake. I murdered all these sons, but I didn't mean to. Of course, she's not going to say that. Of course, she's not going to confess her sin. She is full of the enemy and his lies. And the serpent himself squealing through her, will be cursing God to the day of his destruction. He will never admit of his own volition. And you shouldn't expect him to talk to you that way. No, he comes with the same lies of Athaliah. Verse 14, it says, Jehoiada the priest brought out the captains of hundreds who were set over the army, and said to them, take her outside under guard and slay with the sword whoever follows her. For the priest had said, do not kill her in the house of the Lord. Long story short, she is taken outside and executed. Evil has been slain. The rightful king is here to reign. That's the story of the gospel. That is the picture of our hope. Because unto us a son is